People think Florida is just beaches, theme parks, and crazy headlines. Florida man does this, Florida man does that. But let me tell you something. Those headlines are the tame stuff. The real Florida, the one that exists in the sawgrass and mangroves, in the places where the land can't decide if it wants to be earth or water. That Florida has been hiding secrets since before the conquistadors arrived. And in August 2023, I stumbled into one of those secrets that made me realize why some places on Earth should never be mapped. My name is Sheriff Jake Turner, Collier County, Florida. Been wearing this badge for 22 years, and if you're watching this from Florida, especially South Florida, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you might save your life. And if you think I'm being dramatic, well, smash that like button anyway and keep watching. By the end of this story, you'll understand why certain parts of the Everglades are off limits, why the airboats won't go past certain markers, and why the Seminole elders won't talk about what happened to the cocaine cowboys who vanished in the 80s. Drop a comment. Are you from Florida? Have you ever been out in the glades at night and felt like something was watching you from the water? Something that wasn't a gator. There's a reason for that feeling. This is the story of the Everglades Triangle. A place where drug runners from the 1980s are still alive but changed, where time moves differently, and where the swamp keeps everything that enters, just not in the way you'd expect. August in the Everglades is what hell feels like if hell was humid. The temperature hits 95 by 9 a.m., the humidity makes breathing feel like drowning in slow motion, and the mosquitoes are so thick they show up on radar. It's the worst time to be out in the swamp, which is exactly why the gator poachers chose August to do their hunting. They figured law enforcement would be staying in their air-conditioned offices, not patrolling the backcountry. They figured wrong. I got the call at 5 a.m. on August 14th, 2023. My deputy, Carlos Mendez, had been monitoring social media. Yeah, even poachers are dumb enough to post on Instagram these days, and caught wind of a group planning to hit a protected area deep in the glades. "Sheriff, they're going after the big bulls in Sector 7, Carlos said over the phone. Posted about it on some private hunting forum, talking about 15-footers. Sector 7. Just hearing the designation made my skin crawl. It was a section of the Everglades about 40 miles southwest of Miami, technically part of the national park, but so remote that even the Park Service rarely ventured there. The Seminoles called it the breathing water, a place where the swamp itself was alive in ways that had nothing to do with wildlife. "How many poachers?" I asked, already pulling on my uniform. 3, from what I can tell. Brothers from Homestead, the Vasquez boys. They've been suspected of poaching before, but never caught. The Vasquez brothers, Rico, Miguel, and Danny, were well known in South Florida's illegal hunting circles. Their father had been a legitimate gator hunter back when it was legal year-round, but the boys had turned to poaching when the regulations tightened. They sold the hides to underground fashion dealers and the meat to restaurants that didn't ask questions. "Meet me at the boat launch," I told Carlos, "and bring Martinez. We're going to need the airboat." The ride out to Sector 7 took 2 hours through channels that got narrower and more twisted the deeper we went. Deputy Ray Martinez, a Miami native who'd grown up running airboats, navigated while Carlos and I watched for signs of the poachers. The landscape changed as we moved away from civilization, the tourist-friendly parts of the Everglades giving way to something older, more primal. The sawgrass here grew differently, twisted into patterns that didn't look natural. The water was darker, with an oily sheen that reflected the morning sun in colors that shouldn't exist, and the silence, God, the silence. The Everglades are never quiet. There's always something making noise. Birds, insects, gators. But as we entered Sector 7, the ambient noise just stopped. "I don't like this, Jefe," Martinez said. cutting the airboat's engine. My grandmother told me stories about this place. She said it's where the swamp takes people who don't belong. Your grandmother was a smart woman, I replied, checking my sidearm. But we've got a job to do. We found the Vasquez brothers' boat anchored near a cluster of cypress trees that looked ancient, their trunks twisted into shapes that reminded me of screaming faces. The boat was empty, but their gear was still there. Rifles, hooks, rope, coolers for the meat. Fresh tracks led into the swamp. They're on foot, Carlos observed. Can't be more than an hour ahead of us. We followed the tracks, wading through knee-deep water that was uncomfortably warm, like bath water. The bottom was soft muck that tried to pull our boots off with every step. Mosquitoes swarmed us, but there was something off about them. They wouldn't land, just hovered around us like they were afraid to touch our skin. About a mile in, we heard the first scream. It was high-pitched, terrified, definitely human. We ran toward it, splashing through the water, pushing through walls of sawgrass that cut our exposed skin. The screaming continued, joined by another voice, then another. The Vasquez brothers were all screaming. We burst into a clearing and stopped dead in our tracks. The three brothers were there, standing waist-deep in black water. But they weren't alone. Around them, emerging from the swamp like they'd been part of it all along, were 5 men. But calling them men wasn't quite right. They were humanoid, wearing the remnants of what looked like 1980s clothing. Miami Vice-style suits now rotted and fused with swamp vegetation. Their skin was pale green, almost translucent, with vines growing through it like veins. Their eyes were solid black, reflecting our images like dark mirrors. And I recognized one of them, Tommy the Tiger Torino, a cocaine cowboy from the 1980s who disappeared in 1987 along with a shipment worth $50 million. His face was on old wanted posters in our station. He'd been 28 when he vanished. He still looked 28, if you ignored the fact that cypress bark was growing out of his shoulders and Spanish moss hung from his hair like dreadlocks. "Sheriff Turner," Tommy said, and his voice was like water gurgling through a pipe. "We've been waiting for someone with authority." "Tommy Torino," I said, keeping my hand on my weapon but not drawing it. "You've been missing for 36 years. "Missing?" He laughed, and swamp water dribbled from his mouth. "We never left. We've been here, Sheriff, right here. The swamp took us in, made us part of itself, and now these 3 have trespassed in our territory." Rico Vasquez, the eldest brother, was sobbing. "Please, we didn't know. We'll leave. We'll never come back." "Too late for that," another of the changed men said. This one I didn't recognize, but his clothing suggested late 70s. "You killed one of the guardians." That's when I noticed the dead alligator floating nearby. It was massive, easily 15 feet with a bullet wound in its head. But there was something wrong with it beyond being dead. Its scales were arranged in patterns that looked almost like symbols, and its eyes were human, brown, with intelligence behind them even in death. "That wasn't just a gator," I said, understanding dawning. "No," Tommy confirmed. "That was Hector Morales. He's been guardian of this section since 1982. These idiots shot him while he was sleeping." "That's impossible," Carlos whispered behind me. "Hector Morales was a drug runner who disappeared in the Everglades Triangle," I finished, "along with dozens of others over the years." Tommy smiled, revealing teeth that were more wood than enamel. "The triangle doesn't make people disappear, Sheriff. It transforms them, gives them purpose. We guard this place now, keep out those who would harm it. In exchange, we get to live forever, just differently. You're dead, Martinez said, his voice shaking. "You're all dead." "Death is a human concept," Tommy replied. "We're beyond human now. We're part of the ecosystem. We are the Everglades." The water around the Vasquez brothers began to bubble. Dark shapes moved beneath the surface. More gators, but wrong ones. Gators with human eyes, human intelligence. The brothers pressed together, terrified. "Please," Danny Vasquez, the youngest, begged. "We'll pay. We have money." Tommy laughed again. "Money? We used to kill for money. Now we understand how worthless it is. The swamp doesn't care about your money. It cares about balance. You took one of ours. Now the swamp takes 3 of yours." "Wait," I said, stepping forward. "Tommy, if you ever had any humanity left, let's talk about this. These boys made a mistake. They didn't know." Tommy's black eyes focused on me. "Humanity? Sheriff, humanity is what got us here. Greed, violence, the endless hunger for more. The swamp cured us of that. We don't want anything anymore except to protect this place." "From what?" "From becoming like Miami. From being drained, developed, destroyed. Every year they push further into the glades. Every year more species go extinct. We're the antibodies, Sheriff. The swamp's immune system. The water around the Vasquez brothers was rising, defying gravity, creeping up their bodies like living thing. They tried to move but seemed rooted in place. "You can't do this," I said, finally drawing my weapon. "I'm still the law here." "Your law ends where the water begins," Tommy said. "And Sheriff, look around. You're standing in our jurisdiction now." He was right. Without realizing it, we'd been sinking. The water that had been knee-deep was now waist-deep. The muck at the bottom had us trapped, and the changed men were closing in. "But we're not unreasonable," Tommy continued. "We remember what it was like to be human. We'll make you a deal, Sheriff. We keep the 3 who killed our guardian. You and your deputies leave and never come back to Sector 7. You report them as missing, presumed dead. Gator attack. Happens all the time in the Everglades. I can't do that. Then you join them, and whoever comes looking for you joins too. Eventually, people will learn to stay away. They always do." I looked at the Vasquez brothers. Rico had stopped crying and was staring at the water creeping up his chest with a kind of resigned fascination. Miguel was praying in Spanish. Danny was unconscious, held up only by his brothers. "What happens to them?" I asked. "If we leave, they become guardians. Like Hector was, like we all are. It's not death, Sheriff, it's transformation. They'll understand once it's complete. And if I refuse?" Tommy gestured to the water around us. "Count the eyes watching you, Sheriff." I looked down. In the dark water, dozens of pairs of eyes reflected the sunlight. Some were reptilian. Others were unmistakably human. We were surrounded by things that used to be people, things that used to be animals, and things that were somewhere in between. "Jake," Carlos whispered urgently, "we need to go." Now, I knew he was right. We were outnumbered, outgunned if you counted the supernatural elements, and literally in over our heads. But leaving those boys, "I need proof they're alive," I said to Tommy. "I leave, you let them transform or whatever, but I need to know they survive in some form. I come back in 1 week, alone, and you show me they're existing. Then I close the case." Tommy considered this. "You're negotiating for their souls, Sheriff." "I'm negotiating for my conscience." "Fair enough. 1 week. You come alone to the old ranger station at the edge of Sector 7. We'll show you what they've become. But Sheriff, if you bring backup, if you try to trick us, everyone who enters these waters joins us permanently." "Understood." Tommy stepped back, and the other changed men did the same. The water around us receded enough for us to move, but the Vasquez brothers remained trapped, the water now up to their necks. "Go," Tommy said, while we're feeling generous. We backed away slowly, not turning our backs on them until we were out of sight. The trek back to the airboat was silent except for our labored breathing and the splash of our footsteps. It wasn't until we were racing back toward civilization that Martinez spoke. "Jake, we can't leave them. We don't have a choice. We could come back with a full team, SWAT, maybe call in the feds, and lose them all," I interrupted. "You saw those things. They're not human anymore. Bullets won't stop them. The swamp itself is on their side. So we just let them take 3 kids. Those kids are poachers who knew the risks, and they killed something. Not a gator, not a person, but something in between." Carlos was on his radio, calling in our position when he suddenly stopped. "Sheriff, Control is asking for a status on the Vasquez brothers. Their truck was found at the launch. Their mother is worried." I took the radio. 3 subjects entered restricted area. Failed to respond to warnings. Suspected gator attack, search and rescue operations commencing. It was the beginning of a lie I'd have to live with. But as I looked back toward Sector 7, where the late afternoon sun was turning the water to gold, I knew the truth was something no one would believe anyway. The Everglades Triangle had claimed 3 more. But unlike the cocaine cowboys of the 80s, I'd negotiated a chance to understand what really happened to them. In 1 week, I'd return alone to face whatever the Vasquez brothers had become. If I was lucky, I'd get answers. If I wasn't, well, there'd be 1 more person added to the list of those who'd vanished in the Everglades Triangle. Either way, the swamp would keep its secrets, as it had for decades, as it would for decades to come. The week between leaving the Vasquez brothers and my promised return was the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on routine sheriff duties. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tommy Torino's algae-covered face, those black mirror eyes, the water creeping up the Vasquez brothers' bodies like it was alive. I spent those 7 days researching, diving deep into records most people didn't know existed. The Collier County Sheriff's Office had files going back to the 1960s, but the real treasure trove was in the basement. Boxes of documents from the pre-digital era that no one had bothered to scan. Water-damaged, moldering, filled with reports that would sound insane to modern cops. But I wasn't the only one researching. On day 3, I got a visitor. Maria Osceola, a Seminole elder who rarely left the reservation, walked into my office without announcement. My secretary later swore she never saw her come through the front door. "Sheriff Turner," Maria said, settling into the chair across from my desk like she belonged there. She was probably 70, her face deeply lined, her eyes sharp as broken glass. "You've been to the breathing water." It wasn't a question. "Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The Vasquez boy's mother came to us, wanted us to perform a finding ceremony. But the bones told us they're not lost. They're changing. And you made a deal with the changed ones. I set down the file I'd been reading, a 1973 report about missing drug runners. "How do you know about that?" "My grandfather was there when it started." 1924. A rum runner named Patrick O'Brien tried to use Sector 7 as a hiding spot during Prohibition. The swamp took him, but not in the way you think. 3 days later he walked out, covered in cypress bark, speaking in languages that don't exist. He said the swamp had shown him the truth. What truth? Maria leaned forward. That the Everglades isn't just a place, Sheriff. It's a living entity, older than humanity. It was here when the first natives arrived, and it will be here when the last humans are gone. And sometimes when people bring violence into its heart, it absorbs them, makes them part of itself. The cocaine cowboys were just the latest wave. Before them, it was bootleggers. Before that, Confederate deserters hiding from the Union Army. Before that, Spanish conquistadors looking for gold. The swamp takes them all, transforms them, uses them. For what? Protection. Balance. The Everglades is shrinking, Sheriff. Development, pollution, climate change. The swamp is fighting back the only way it knows how, by creating guardians from those who would harm it. I pulled out a map of the Everglades, one I'd been marking with disappearances. There's a pattern. Every major drug route from the 80s goes through what you call the breathing water. Maria nodded. The cocaine cowboys thought they were clever, using the deep swamp to move product. They didn't realize they were feeding themselves to something ancient. Between 1978 and 1989, over 60 major drug runners vanished in that specific area. The DEA thought they were killing each other. The truth was stranger. Tommy Torino said they're guardians now. Tommy Torino is dead, Maria said firmly. What you met was the swamp wearing his memories like a mask. The consciousness might think it's Tommy, might have his memories, but the human soul, that's long gone. Then what about the Vasquez brothers? Maria was quiet for a moment. They're in transition. Not dead, not alive. The swamp is deciding what to do with them. Your deal might have saved them or condemned them to something worse than death. Only time will tell. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Sheriff, when you go back, take this. She placed a small leather pouch on my desk. Sawgrass ash, blessed by our medicine man. It won't protect you completely, but it might keep you human long enough to get answers. After she left, I opened the pouch. The ash inside was impossibly fine, almost luminescent. It smelled like rain and decay, and something older than both. I continued my research, now armed with Maria's context. The files painted a disturbing picture. The Everglades Triangle wasn't just taking criminals. Park rangers who got too curious, archaeologists who dug too deep, even tourists who wandered off marked trails. They all had a chance of joining the changed ones. But it was a file from 1987 that made everything click. October 15th, 1987. A joint DEA-FBI operation to intercept a major cocaine shipment. 50 agents surrounded the drop point in Sector 7. The dealers, Tommy Torino's crew, were supposed to be meeting Colombian suppliers. But when the agents moved in, they found something else. The report was heavily redacted, but I could piece together enough. The agents found Tommy's crew in the water, partially transformed, begging for help. But when the agents tried to extract them, the swamp itself seemed to attack. Water moved against gravity, trees bent without wind, and things that weren't quite human and weren't quite animal emerged from the darkness. 17 agents were lost that night. The official report blamed a methane explosion, swamp gas igniting. But handwritten notes in the margin told a different story. They're still alive, one agent had written. We can hear them calling from the water at night. The DEA never ran another operation in Sector 7. I also found records of attempts to drain that section of the Everglades. In 1951, 1967, and 1994, developers had tried to reclaim the land. Each time, the workers had reported strange incidents. Equipment failing in impossible ways, workers having shared nightmares, and eventually, people disappearing. The projects were always abandoned. On day 6, Carlos came to me with something interesting. Boss, I've been tracking social media posts about Sector 7. Look at this." He showed me his laptop. There was an Instagram account called Everglades Eternal, created just 3 days ago. It had posted a single video. The video was shot from above, maybe by a drone. It showed 3 figures standing waist-deep in dark water. They were moving, but not like they were trying to escape. They were dancing, swaying in unison to music only they could hear. The caption read, "The newest guardians learn the rhythm of the swamp. They understand now. They protect now." "That's them," Carlos said. "That's the Vasquez brothers." I looked closer. He was right. Despite the low resolution, I could make out their features. But they were different. Their skin had a greenish tint, and there seemed to be something growing from their backs. Branches? Fins? It was hard to tell. "We have to report this to..." "To who?" I interrupted. "The FBI?" "Hey, we found some drug runners from the 80s living in the swamp as plant-human hybrids, and they're transforming poachers into guardians. They'd think we're insane. So we do nothing. I go back tomorrow, alone, as promised, and I get answers." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch, looking out at the flat Florida landscape, thinking about what I'd learned. The Everglades had been here for 5,000 years. Humans had been trying to tame it for less than 200. Maybe the swamp was just defending itself the only way it knew how. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was just coordinates and a time, 3:33 a.m. The coordinates were for the old ranger station at the edge of Sector 7. The time was oddly specific, 3:33, the Devil's Hour, when the barrier between worlds was supposedly thinnest. August 21st, 2023. 3 a.m. I drove through the empty Florida night toward my appointment with whatever the Vasquez brothers had become. The sawgrass ash Maria had given me was in my pocket, and I'd loaded my service weapon with silver bullets, not because I thought they'd work, but because it made me feel like I had some control. The ranger station had been abandoned since the 1990s. It was a small wooden structure, raised on stilts to keep it above floodwaters, slowly being reclaimed by the swamp. As I parked my truck, my headlights illuminated 5 figures standing in front of the building. Tommy Torino and 4 others, all changed ones from different eras, but no Vasquez brothers. "Sheriff," Tommy greeted me as I approached. "Punctual, we appreciate that." "Where are they?" "Coming. They're still learning to move in their new forms. The transition has been interesting." "Are they human?" Tommy laughed, that wet, gurgling sound. "Were we ever really human, Sheriff? Or were we just wearing humanity like a costume, waiting for something to show us what we really were?" Before I could answer, the water beside the station began to ripple. 3 shapes emerged, and I had to force myself not to step back. The Vasquez brothers were recognizable, but transformed. Their skin had taken on the texture and color of mangrove bark. Their hair had been replaced by Spanish moss that hung down their backs. Their eyes were still human, still aware, but set in faces that were becoming something else. Roots grew from their feet, anchoring them to the swamp floor. Branches sprouted from their shoulders and backs, already beginning to leaf. "Sheriff Turner," Rico said, and his voice was like wind through leaves. "Thank you for coming." "Rico, are you okay?" He considered the question. "I'm not in pain, if that's what you mean. I'm just different. I can feel every living thing in the swamp, every fish, every bird, every insect. I'm connected to it all." "We tried to fight it at first," Miguel added, "the transformation. But fighting just made it worse. When we accepted it, it became almost pleasant, like finally fitting into a skin that was made for you. Danny, the youngest, hadn't spoken. He was the most transformed, bark covering most of his body, his fingers elongated into branch-like projections. Danny can't talk yet, Tommy explained. His vocal cords are changing into something else, but he can communicate through the root system. Every plant in the Everglades is connected. He speaks through them now. As if to demonstrate, the sawgrass around us rustled without wind, forming patterns that almost looked like words. "This is insane," I said. "This is evolution," Tommy countered. "Humans have had their run. We're poisoning the planet, destroying ecosystems, causing mass extinctions. The Earth is fighting back, Sheriff, and the Everglades is one of its weapons." "So what? You're eco-terrorists now?" "We're antibodies. When someone comes to harm the swamp, we stop them. When developers get too close, we make them reconsider. When poachers kill protected species, we intervene. We're not evil, Sheriff. We're necessary." "And the Vasquez brothers? They're just okay with this?" Rico spoke up. "We killed for money, Sheriff. Sold gator hides to make a living. Now we protect those same gators. It's redemption, in a way. We're paying back what we took." "For how long?" "Forever," Tommy said. "Or until the swamp no longer needs us. Whichever comes first." I pulled out the sawgrass ash Maria had given me. Tommy and the others immediately stepped back. "Seminole magic," Tommy hissed. "That's cheating, Sheriff." "I need to know something," I said, holding the pouch like a weapon. "Can they be turned back?" "Can any of you be turned back?" Tommy was silent for a long moment. "In the early days of the change, maybe. First, 48 hours. After that, the transformation is irreversible. We are what we are, Sheriff. The swamp and us are one. And you're content with that? Content." Tommy looked at his bark-covered hands. "I was a cocaine cowboy. I killed 17 people that I remember, probably more. I destroyed families with the drugs I moved. Now I protect one of the last wild places in Florida. Yeah, Sheriff, I'm content. What about your families? The people you left behind? They mourned us and moved on. That's what humans do. They adapt, forget, survive. In a generation, we'll be legends. In 2, we'll be forgotten. But the swamp will remember. The swamp always remembers." One of the other changed ones, wearing the remnants of a Park Service uniform, stepped forward. "Sheriff, you need to understand something. This isn't a curse. It's not a punishment. It's just nature taking back what belongs to it. Every civilization thinks it's eternal, but nature always wins in the end. We're just the proof of that." "So, what now?" I asked. "I know you exist. I know what you are. What do you want from me?" "Keep people away from Sector 7, Tommy said. "Mark it as dangerous, off limits. Let us do our work without interference. In exchange, we'll keep the violence to a minimum. No more transformations unless absolutely necessary. And if I refuse, then more people disappear. More families wonder what happened. More lies get told. Eventually, enough people vanish that the government has to act. They'll try to destroy this section of the Everglades. And when they do, the swamp will defend itself. The war between nature and civilization will start here, Sheriff. Do you want that on your conscience?" I looked at the Vasquez brothers, still recognizable but no longer human. They seemed at peace, which was more than I could say for most people I knew. "I need proof that you'll keep your word," I said. Tommy smiled. "Check the news tomorrow. Every piece of trash dumped in the Everglades over the last week will be found piled at the entrance to the national park. Every poacher will find their traps destroyed, their boats sabotaged. but no one will be hurt. That's our good faith gesture. And the Vasquez brothers' family? They'll receive closure, Rico said. Our bodies will wash up tomorrow. Well, bodies that look like ours. The swamp can create very convincing replicas. Our families will mourn, have funerals, move on. It's better than them knowing the truth. Is it? Would you want to know your son became part of a swamp? Miguel asked. That he's neither dead nor alive? That he'll exist for centuries as something between plant and animal? No, Sheriff. The lie is kinder. The next morning, everything Tommy promised came true. The entrance to Everglades National Park looked like a garbage dump. Thousands of beer cans, plastic bottles, fishing nets, and other trash had been mysteriously collected and deposited at the visitor center overnight. Security cameras showed nothing but static between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The pile was arranged almost artistically, spelling out a message in refuse: "Stop poisoning us." 3 bodies washed up near Chokoloskee Bay around noon. Perfect replicas of the Vasquez brothers, down to their tattoos and dental work. The coroner ruled it death by alligator attack, noting the bodies showed signs of being in the water for exactly a week. Their mother identified them, sobbing over closed caskets. I stood in the back of the funeral home, knowing I was looking at empty shells while the real brothers were growing roots 30 miles away. But the most disturbing event happened at a development company's office in Naples. Every computer simultaneously displayed underwater footage of the Everglades, the parts that would be destroyed if their latest project went through. Fish, birds, manatees, all the life that would be displaced. The video ended with text: "We are watching. We remember. Choose wisely." The company announced the next day they were canceling the development due to environmental concerns. Carlos came to my office that afternoon, closing the door behind him. "Jake, what the hell is going on?" This morning, every poacher in the county found their equipment destroyed. Boats with holes punched in them, traps bent into pretzels, guns rusted solid overnight. It's like the swamp declared war on them. "Maybe it did," I said, not looking up from the report I was writing. A report full of lies about the Vasquez brothers' deaths. "You know something. You've known something since we went out there." I set down my pen and looked at my deputy, a good man who deserved better than lies. "Carlos, if I told you the truth, you'd either think I'm insane or you'd have to make a choice that would haunt you forever. Trust me when I say that some secrets are better kept. Those aren't the Vasquez brothers in those caskets." It wasn't a question. "The Vasquez brothers are dead," I said carefully. "Their families have closure. That's what matters." Carlos stared at me for a long moment. "Martinez wants to go back. He says he needs to understand what we saw. Tell Martinez that if he goes back to Sector 7, he won't return. Not as himself, anyway. You made a deal with them. With those things. I made a deal to protect the living from the changed, and the changed from the living. It's the best compromise I could manage." Carlos left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. The truth has a way of spreading, like water finding cracks in a dam. That night, I got another visit from Maria Osceola. This time, she brought others, 3 Seminole elders, all looking at me with expressions that mixed respect and wariness. "You've spoken with the Breathing Waters guardians," Maria said. "You've made a pact." I did what I had to do to prevent more deaths. One of the other elders, a man who looked ancient beyond years, spoke in Mikasaki. Maria translated. "He says the swamp has chosen you as an intermediary. This is both an honor and a curse. You'll be able to communicate with the changed ones, but you'll never be free of their presence." "What does that mean?" Show him your hand, Sheriff. I looked down at my right hand, the one I'd used to shake Tommy's when we sealed our deal. There was a mark on my palm I hadn't noticed before, faint, but unmistakable. It looked like mangrove roots spreading from my lifeline, creating a pattern that hurt to follow with my eyes. The mark of the breathing water, Maria said. You're connected now. You'll know when someone enters Sector 7 with ill intent. You'll feel when the swamp is threatened. And when your time comes to die, Sheriff, you'll have a choice to make. What choice? Whether to die as a man or live forever as something else. The elder spoke again, and Maria translated. Our people have dealt with the breathing water for centuries. We know its hungers, its needs. It's not evil, but it's not good either. It simply is. Like a hurricane or a wildfire, it's a force of nature that sometimes wears human faces. Why didn't you warn people? Would they have listened? White men had to learn for themselves that some places weren't meant for them. The cocaine cowboys, the developers, the poachers, they all thought they could conquer the swamp. The swamp proved them wrong. And now I'm supposed to be what, its ambassador? You're supposed to maintain the balance, Maria said. Keep humans from pushing too deep into the swamp's territory. Keep the changed ones from expanding beyond their boundaries. It's a delicate dance, Sheriff. One misstep, and both sides suffer. They left me with a warning. The mark would grow stronger over time. I'd start having dreams that weren't dreams, visions of the swamp's past and future. I'd know things I shouldn't know, and eventually I'd have to train someone to take my place because the human mind could only handle the connection for so long before it started to fracture. Over the next month, I learned what they meant. The dreams started immediately. I saw the Everglades as it was centuries ago, vast and untouched, teeming with life. I saw conquistadors in armor sinking into the muck, their gold weighing them down, their bodies becoming food for the swamp. I saw Seminoles making offerings to the breathing water, maintaining a balance that white settlers would later break. I saw the cocaine cowboys of the 1980s, flying low over the water in planes loaded with product, not knowing they were feeding themselves to something ancient. I watched Tommy Torino's transformation in detail, the terror, the pain, then the strange peace as his consciousness merged with the swamp's vast network. But I also saw the future, the Everglades shrinking year by year, the water rising with climate change, the changed ones growing desperate, expanding their territory, taking more people to strengthen their defenses. I saw a war between human civilization and the swamp itself, with casualties on both sides that would make the evening news worldwide. During the day, I functioned normally, handled regular sheriff duties, dealt with the usual Florida insanity. But I also felt the swamp's presence constantly. I knew when boats entered Sector 7, mostly researchers and park rangers who were allowed passage. I knew when pollution levels spiked in certain areas. I knew when another gator was killed illegally, feeling it like a small wound. 3 weeks after my deal with Tommy, I had to use my connection for the first time. A group of extreme kayakers, YouTubers looking for content, decided to explore the forbidden parts of the Everglades. They'd heard rumors about Sector 7, about the disappearances, and thought it would make great clickbait. Exploring Florida's Bermuda Triangle at 3 a.m. gone wrong. I felt them enter the swamp's territory at sunset, their excitement and ignorance radiating through my connection. The changed ones were stirring, preparing to defend their domain. If those kids went much deeper, they'd either disappear or return so traumatized they'd never be the same. I drove out to the edge of Sector 7, where the last cell tower provided minimal coverage. Using the emergency alert system, I sent a text to all phones in the area. Emergency. Toxic algae bloom detected. Evacuate immediately. Exposure causes permanent neurological damage. It was a lie that might save their lives. I watched through my connection as the kayakers checked their phones, debated, then decided their YouTube fame wasn't worth brain damage. They turned back, disappointed but alive. The changed ones settled back into their watching, and I drove home with a migraine that felt like roots growing through my skull. Carlos confronted me again the next day. Those YouTubers, you warned them off. How did you know they were there? I have sources. Bullshit. Jake, your eyes are different. Sometimes they reflect light like a gator's, and Martinez says he saw you standing in the rain yesterday, not getting wet. The water was avoiding you. Martinez is seeing things. Is he? Or are you becoming one of them? I showed him the mark on my palm. It had grown, the root pattern now extending up my wrist. I'm connected to it, Carlos. The swamp. I made a deal to keep people safe, but the price is becoming part of the network. I can feel what happens in Sector 7. I can communicate with the changed ones. And yeah, sometimes the water recognizes me as friendly. Jesus Christ, Jake. It's not permanent, not yet. As long as I stay out of the deep swamp, as long as I don't fully accept the transformation, I remain human. Mostly. How long can you maintain that? Maria Osceola says maybe 5 years. Maybe 10 if I'm strong. Eventually, I'll have to choose. Step down and break the connection, risking chaos, or complete the transformation and become a permanent bridge between worlds. That's insane. That's Florida, Carlos. This whole state is built on impossible things. Cities and swamps, theme parks on wetlands, millions of people living where hurricanes regularly try to wipe them out. Is it really so strange that the land itself might be fighting back? That night, I had a different kind of dream. Not a vision from the swamp, but a visit from the Vasquez brothers. They appeared in my bedroom, translucent, made of mist and memory. "Sheriff," Rico said, his voice like wind through sawgrass, "we wanted to thank you." "For what? Letting you become monsters?" "For letting us become guardians," Miguel corrected. "We were monsters before, killing for money, destroying for profit. Now we protect, now we have purpose." Danny, who still couldn't speak normally, communicated through the rustling of palm fronds outside my window. "We are happy. Your mother buried empty coffins today. And she has closure. She believes we're at peace. In a way, we are. Sheriff, the swamp isn't evil. It's just different. It operates on timescales humans can't comprehend. What seems like horror to you is just adaptation to it." "Tommy says more will come," Rico added. "Climate change is accelerating things. More storms, more flooding, more people pushed into the swamp's territory. The breathing water will need more guardians. Not on my watch. Your watch won't last forever, Sheriff. But while it does, we'll honor our deal. Minimal violence, maximum deterrence. We'll be the monsters in stories that keep people away, not the monsters that drag them in." They faded as the sun rose, leaving me with the smell of stagnant water and Spanish moss. A month later, the FBI came sniffing around. Agent Sarah Cross, a woman who looked like she'd seen too much and believed too little. She had files on every disappearance in the Everglades Triangle going back 50 years. "Sheriff Turner," she said, sitting across from me in my office. "I'm investigating what we're calling the Sector 7 anomaly. 63 confirmed disappearances over 4 decades. 12 in the last 18 months. And suddenly, they stop. Right after the Vasquez brothers' deaths. Curious, isn't it? Maybe their deaths scared off other poachers. Maybe. Or maybe someone made a deal with whatever's out there." Agent Cross have you ever been to the real Everglades? Not the tourist areas, but the deep swamp? Several times. Then you know there are things out there that don't fit in reports. Things that can't be explained by science or logic. Sometimes the best we can do is manage them, not understand them. She studied me for a long moment. You know what's happening in Sector 7? I know enough to keep people safe. And the Vasquez brothers? Died in a gator attack. Tragic, but not uncommon. She pulled out a tablet, showed me a satellite image. It was Sector 7, taken from above with some kind of thermal imaging. The area glowed differently than the surrounding swamp, patterns of heat that looked almost like a neural network. This is a living system, she said, something that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of biology. And these, she pointed to specific hotspots, appear to be mobile entities that register as partially human, partially plant. Care to explain? Florida is full of things that shouldn't exist. Pythons the size of school buses, spiders that eat birds, politicians with ethics. Maybe this is just another one of those things. Sheriff, I think you're protecting something, or something is protecting you. That mark on your palm, the one you keep trying to hide, I've seen it before. On a researcher who disappeared in the Amazon, on a park ranger who vanished in Yellowstone. There are places where the boundary between human and nature gets blurred. You've crossed that boundary. And what if I have? Then you're either humanity's last line of defense or nature's first wave of attack. I need to know which. Before I could answer, every electronic device in the building shut down. Computers, phones, even the battery-powered clock on my wall. The air grew thick with humidity despite the air conditioning, and I could hear, faintly, the sound of water lapping at shores that were 30 miles away. Agent Cross's eyes widened as condensation formed on the windows, running in patterns that looked like words. Leave us alone. I think you have your answer, I said, as the electronics flickered back to life. She gathered her files, standing to leave. At the door, she turned back. This isn't over, Sheriff. Whatever you're protecting, whatever you've become, the government will eventually want answers. Let them come, I said, feeling the swamp's presence like armor around me. They'll find that some questions are better left unasked. It's been a year now since the Vasquez brothers were taken. August 2024, and I'm recording this from my office, knowing it might be my last entry as a fully human sheriff. The mark on my palm has spread up my entire arm, looking like a tattoo of mangrove roots that moves when you're not looking directly at it. My deputies have stopped questioning the strange things that happen around me. They've accepted that their sheriff is something between human and whatever the swamp creates, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. After Agent Cross's visit, things escalated. The government didn't come with troops or scientists. They came with developers. If they couldn't understand Sector 7, they'd destroy it, build over it, turn it into condos and golf courses. The paperwork was rushed through. Environmental protections waived under some Homeland Security provision. They were going to drain the breathing water. I felt it the moment the plan was approved. Every changed one in the Everglades screamed in my mind simultaneously. The swamp itself seemed to convulse. That night, I drove to Sector 7 without conscious thought, my body operating on instinct that wasn't entirely my own. Tommy and dozens of others were waiting at the ranger station. But not just the cocaine cowboys and poachers I'd met before. There were conquistadors still wearing rusted armor fused with cypress bark. Seminole warriors from centuries past, their bodies made of sawgrass and determination. Bootleggers from the 1920s, their zoot suits now woven from Spanish moss. even what looked like a Calusa Indian from before European contact, so transformed by time that he was more spirit than substance. "They're going to destroy us," Tommy said, and for the first time I heard fear in his voice. "Not if we stop them. We can't leave the swamp, Sheriff. We try to go beyond the boundaries, we dissolve. We're part of this ecosystem now. If it dies, we die. But I can leave. You're going to fight the federal government. With what army?" I looked at the assembled guardians of the Everglades, centuries of absorbed souls, all united in their need to protect this place. With information. Every person who's disappeared here. Every cocaine cowboy who vanished. They had families, associates, secrets. You all remember your human lives, right? Tommy's eyes widened with understanding. The cartels. The old families. They never knew what happened to their people. Time to tell them. What followed was the strangest intelligence operation in history. Through my connection to the Changed Ones, I accessed memories of drug routes, hidden stashes, Swiss bank accounts, and cartel connections spanning 40 years. Tommy Torino alone knew where $50 million in the 1980s drug money was buried. Other cocaine cowboys had similar secrets. I reached out to the old families, the ones who still ran Miami's underworld from penthouses and legitimate businesses. I told them their missing relatives were alive and wanted to make deals. The meetings were surreal. Me, a sheriff, sitting with crime bosses negotiating on behalf of people who'd been missing for decades. "Prove it," said Carlos Mendoza, no relation to my deputy, whose brother had vanished in 1986. "Prove my brother still exists." I had him write a question only his brother would know the answer to. That night, I took it to the swamp. The next day, I returned with not just the answer, but with a detailed map to a stash of gold coins his brother had hidden, worth $3 million. "What do they want?" Mendoza asked, convinced. "Save the Everglades. Stop the development. They're guardians now, protecting the swamp that transformed them. In exchange, they'll provide information on every hidden asset, every buried treasure, every secret that died with them." It took 2 weeks, but suddenly the development project faced massive opposition. Environmental lawyers, funded by mysterious sources, filed hundreds of injunctions. Politicians received donations that changed their minds. The media got anonymous tips about corruption in the approval process. But the real turning point came when the Changed Ones decided to send a message directly. August 14th, 2024. Exactly 1 year after the Vasquez brothers were taken. Every screen in South Florida, TVs, phones, computers, even gas pump displays, simultaneously showed the same video for exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds. It started with aerial footage of the Everglades in its pristine state. Then, faces began to appear in the water, hundreds of them. Everyone who'd been taken by the swamp over the centuries. They spoke in unison. "We are the absorbed. We are the changed. We were criminals, poachers, invaders, destroyers. The swamp took us, transformed us, gave us purpose. We protect now what we once harmed. This is our penance and our privilege. Leave the breathing water alone, or join us in our eternal watch." The video ended with coordinates and a date. The exact location where the development was supposed to begin, and the day construction was scheduled to start. The FBI, CIA, NSA, every acronym descended on South Florida. But they found nothing. The video had no source, no digital fingerprint. It had appeared simultaneously everywhere, then vanished without a trace, existing only in people's memories and the few recordings made of screens. Agent Cross came back, this time with a full team. "Sheriff Turner, you're under arrest for terrorism, conspiracy, and about 30 other charges we're still figuring out." On what evidence? You were the last person to have contact with the Vasquez brothers. You've been seen entering Sector 7 repeatedly. And that mark on your arm? We know what it means now. They took me to a federal facility in Miami, not a normal jail, someplace off the books, where they deal with things that don't fit in normal categories. The cell was more like a laboratory with sensors monitoring everything about me. For 3 days, they questioned me, showed me satellite footage of Sector 7, thermal images of the changed ones, recordings of electronic anomalies that coincided with my movements. They had a professor from MIT who specialized in anomalous biology, a priest who performed exorcisms for the Vatican, and even a Seminole shaman they'd convinced to consult. You're becoming one of them, Agent Cross said during one session. The transformation is accelerating. Your blood has chlorophyll in it. Your brain shows patterns consistent with plant consciousness. You're photosynthesizing, Sheriff. Humans don't photosynthesize. I'm adapting. To what end? Balance. The swamp needs a voice in the human world. I'm that voice. And if we don't release you? I smiled, feeling the presence of every changed one in the Everglades. Then you'll see what hundreds of absorbed souls can do when they're angry. That night, the facility lost power. Not just electricity, all power. Batteries drained, generators failed, even chemical light sticks went dark. In that absolute darkness they came. Not physically, they couldn't leave the swamp, but their consciousness, transmitted through the water and the air, the humidity that permeates everything in Florida, manifested as whispers in the dark. Every agent, every scientist, every guard heard the voices of the absorbed. Personal details, secrets, sins, all whispered by people who shouldn't exist. The Seminole shaman they'd brought in later told me he'd never been so terrified. The breathing water spoke through you, he said. It showed us what would happen if the balance was broken. Cities flooded not with water, but with consciousness. Every drop of rain carrying the memories of the absorbed. Civilization drowning in its own sins. They released me the next morning. But the damage was done. The mark had spread during my captivity, now covering my entire right side. I could photosynthesize. I could communicate with any plant in the Everglades. I could feel the health of the ecosystem like a pulse. Carlos, my deputy, was waiting when I got back to Collier County. "Jake, you look different." He was right. My skin had a greenish tint in certain lights. My eyes reflected like water. And sometimes when I stood still too long, roots would start growing from my feet. "I'm changing, Carlos." Faster than expected. I need you to prepare to take over as sheriff. I can't do what you do. You won't have to. I've bought us time. The development is dead, tied up in so much litigation it'll never happen. The old families are protecting Sector 7 now, seeing it as a memorial to their lost people. And the changed ones have agreed to stay within their boundaries. For how long? Decades, maybe. Long enough for people to figure out that we need the wild places, that civilization can't exist without them. That night, the Vasquez brothers visited me again. They were barely recognizable as human now, more mangrove than man. But they seemed happy. "Sheriff," Rico said, his voice like wind through leaves, "the swamp is pleased. Balance has been restored. You've done what we couldn't. Bridged both worlds. At a cost. Everything has a cost. But look what you've gained. You can feel the life of the entire ecosystem. You know when a rare orchid blooms 50 miles away. You sense the migration of birds before they arrive. Is that really a loss? I'm losing my humanity. You're gaining something else, something the world needs. Humans have forgotten their part of nature, not separate from it. You're remembering. You're evolving. Into what? Into what humanity needs to become to survive the next century. The climate is changing, Sheriff. The oceans are rising. The old way of living is ending. Those who adapt, who remember their connection to the living world, will survive. Those who don't. He gestured at the sprawl of development lights in the distance. They'll become history. 2 weeks later, I officially announced my retirement, effective in 6 months. Enough time to train Carlos, to establish protocols for dealing with Sector 7, to document everything for whoever comes next. But I know I won't last 6 months. The transformation is accelerating. Every day, I'm less human, more something else. Not a changed one, not fully. Something new. A hybrid that can exist in both worlds. Maria Osceola visited me yesterday. She took one look at me and nodded. "It's time," she said. "The breathing water has chosen. You can fight it and die human, or accept it and become something unprecedented. What will I become? A bridge. Permanent, conscious, able to translate between the swamp and civilization. The first of a new kind of human, one adapted for the world that's coming. And if I refuse, then someone else will be chosen. The transformation is inevitable. The question is whether it happens violently or peacefully. Tonight, I'm going to Sector 7 one last time. Not to become a changed one, but to complete my evolution into whatever I'm becoming. Tommy and the others will be there, welcoming me not as one of them, but as something that can speak for them in the human world while still remaining partially human myself. Carlos will become sheriff. He's a good man who understands the balance now. He'll keep people away from Sector 7, maintain the peace between the two worlds. The Vasquez brothers will continue their guardianship, protecting the swamp that transformed them. In a strange way, they've found redemption. And me? I'll become what the world needs. A translator between species, a bridge between humanity and the nature it's forgotten it's part of. If you're watching this from Florida, remember, the Everglades isn't just a swamp. It's a living system older than human memory. It's taken criminals and conquistadors, poachers and pirates, and transformed them into protectors. It's not evil, it's not good, it's just nature, adapting, surviving, evolving. The Everglades Triangle isn't a place where people disappear. It's a place where people transform, where humanity's worst become nature's guardians, where the boundary between human and wild dissolves like sugar and water. My name was Jake Turner. I was the sheriff of Collier County, Florida. Now I'm something else. Something without a name yet. Something that stands between the human world and the breathing water. The swamp remembers everything. Every extinction, every evolution, every transformation. And now, I'm part of that memory. Part of that evolution. Part of Florida's strangest truth. That in a state built on impossible things, the most impossible might be the most necessary. Protect the wild places. They're protecting you in ways you'll never understand. Until you have to. Until you change. Until you remember what you really are. Final entry. August 28, 2024. Sheriff Jake Turner was reported missing on August 29, 2024. His body was never found. Deputy Carlos Mendez was appointed interim sheriff. Sector 7 of the Everglades remains restricted. The development project was canceled due to environmental concerns. Local fishermen report seeing a figure at the edge of the swamp some mornings, half man, half mangrove, watching the sunrise. They say if you wave, it waves back with a hand that's part flesh, part root. They say it's protecting something. They say it's waiting for something. They say it's the future of Florida, where the line between human and nature no longer exists. The Everglades Triangle continues to transform those who enter with wrong intentions. The balance holds. For now. 3 teenagers who attempted to explore Sector 7 for TikTok views reported being turned back by a sheriff made of trees, who knew their names, their intentions, and exactly what to say to convince them to leave. Their footage shows only a figure in the distance, unclear, impossible to identify. But the voice on their recording is clear. The swamp isn't for views or likes. It's for transformation. Come back when you're ready to change. Until then, go home. That's an order from Sheriff Turner. The Sheriff's Department has no comment on these recordings. The Everglades remembers. The Everglades protects. The Everglades transforms. Welcome to Florida, where evolution never stopped. It just got weirder.